I have to say, seriously, these Zoom meetings are I do find them anxiety producing. And I don't know, I guess it's because I'm so afraid that the technology is going to go wacko.
We'll assume that if you drop out, it's just a tech issue.
Okay, fair
You won't
enough.
be worried.
I won't do it. Yes, unless you ask me a really tough question, then I might just hang up.
Yeah, then we might think you ran away, yeah.
Welcome to episode 1 of Scriber Under Quarantine. When the lockdown began, we lost human connection. We needed a tool to reconnect our community, share quarantine struggles, and be real and honest with each other during a very strange time. Plus, we wanted to create something cool. In this episode, we interview everyone's favorite office manager, Chris Kratz, followed by an interview with Scriber student author Jenna Jensen, whose story is in last year's Scriber book Listen. But enough of me talking, let's get into it.
Where did you grow up, and how did you come to live in Edmonds?
Oh, that's an easy question, Jenna. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, east of the mountains, a conservative stronghold, and I managed to make it until I graduated from high school in 1967. And then I came to the UW. It was in 1967. That was the year that it was known as the Summer of Love. And the hippies were blossoming all over. And so this is a pretty good story.
Chris shared with us about her upbringing in Spokane, Washington, and talked about the Catholic high school she attended. The nuns there taught her to love her neighbor, to be peaceful, and to be kind, and she found those same values in the hippie movement of the 60s and 70s. Those common threads of peace and love between two cultures made her excited to attend UW in Seattle.
So when I got to Seattle in 67, I could not wait. The Ave, University Avenue, was just kind of alive with people. And I did mix right into that. And I was trying to go to classes at the same time. And one thing led to another. There was the great boycott going on that year, the United Farm Workers and Cesar Chavez. And so that was one of the things I was really interested in. So I joined that, and we picketed around the Husky Union building, and I got to know a lot of those people. And the more I knew them, the more I felt like I belonged, with those people. And so I managed to stick out my classes, I think, for about almost 3 years. And then in 1970, the United States invaded Cambodia. And, the Vietnam War was still going on. And so there was I don't know if you've seen pictures of the freeway demonstrations, but that's when the freeways, were shut down in Seattle.
Do you want to tell us about maybe the relationship between you and your father?
Well, yes, Jenna. But I don't want to give the wrong impression about it. I loved my dad very much. He loved me very much. There was never any, well, I shouldn't say there was never any open conflict, but there was rarely open conflict. My politics, as they got more radical, disturbed him more because he was worried about what the outcome might be for me than that he was opposed to the politics. And at that point, a lot of people decided that, the theme was no business as usual. So we were scheduled to take final exams, and I was one of the people who boycotted final exams because ending the war was so much more important. So the war did end, and I take full credit for that, of course.
After changing the course of the Vietnam War, Chris left UW and went to Seattle Central Community College. At SCCC, she became the editor of the school newspaper, but not everyone agreed with her radical ideals.
And the publication board tried to fire me for being too radical. And one of the proudest moments in my life is that the Black Student Union, and in those days they called themselves the Oriental Student Union, but they occupied the offices, the newspaper offices, until the publications board agreed to reinstate me. So that was a wonderful time in my life.
Chris continued her journey, starting a family and finding a home in Edmonds.
I had a son in 1975. I was a single mom. And then I was living on Capitol Hill. And I thought, well, if you're a mom, your life has to be a little bit different. so as luck would have it, I had a very dear friend who had a house here in Edmonds that had belonged to her grandmother, and her dad was also a friend of mine. And he said, you know, Chris, you'd be doing us a favor if you'd live in that house because it's empty now and it's just kind of fallen to pieces. And if you could stay there and take care of it, I wouldn't charge you rent. So that's how I moved to Edmonds, and we lived there for, oh gosh, well, until I married Larry. Oh, I think I'm telling you way too much. but, so I was still working at Virginia Mason. I married Larry. We moved to Linwood, and we had 3 more kids, and that's where I've stayed since.
So what you're saying is you're a superhero.
It is a long story, Jenna. See, that's part of it. You get to be so old, and there's so much to say.
Yeah, well, I think you're a superhero, so.
Well, thank you for that.
Once settled into Edmonds, Chris finally made it to Scriber Lake High School.
Lyndale had been where my kids had gone to school, and at that time, the principal there just happened to be Dave Zwaszka, who had been my... Yeah. And see, we'd gotten to know him because my son, when he was a sophomore at Meadowdale, would come home and he drove us nuts. Every dinner would be all about Mr. Z and what Mr. Z says. And Mr. Z said we should read this book. And Mr. Z said we should watch this movie. And I just thought, oh my God, I've heard enough about this Mr. Z. But anyhow, when we met him, we understood. And we, you know, he's just like, we think in our family, he's like a living legend. There's nobody quite like Mr. Z. Jenna, I have had Scriber Lake on my mind since I first learned about it, but the office manager had been there. Her name was Carol Bowman. She had been there for 26 years, and I thought, this lady's never going to retire. But then when she did retire, I applied for it, and got it. And, I love it there so much. The kids, the families, the staff, it's just like, it's the school that I wish everybody could go to.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, everyone at Scriber loves you. Like, we adore you.
Well, it's mutual. Maybe thank you for saying that. But when, partly the other school, like I worked at EW for, I think, 6 years. And I love those kids too, but see, there were 1,800 of them, and there's no way you can get to know people on a level, with 1,800 kids versus 200. There's just,
Yeah, you can't buy enough candy for 800 kids. So.
True that.
Oh, okay. So last year in Margie's music class, I learned that you love Bruce Springsteen.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, well, I think I would have a hard time explaining. I think because there's so many parallels between Bruce's life and see what he writes about his life. His music is all so authentic because he's speaking for himself and he's not really speaking for anyone else. But the connection with me and Bruce is that our lives were so very parallel for so long. And he was raised a block away from a Catholic church, just like I was. He had to go to Catholic schools, just like I did. If you read his biography and if you listen to his songs, there's a ton of that conflict between what you were raised with, what you believe, what you value, and what you decide to carry with you and what you decide to let go. And see, that just speaks to me so much. But like my mom's family, her sisters were all teachers. They were clearly upwardly mobile. My dad was a railroad brakeman, and it was a tough life for him. And see, a lot of parallels in Bruce's songs are about his dad's life, trying to support the family and eke out a living and being working class. That's all really, really similar, and that was very much the same with my dad. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing, probably is the working. And then also that I wanted so much to make him happy. I just valued him so much that I wanted to do whatever I could do that made him happy, but not to compromise who I was at the same time.
We talked about fathers. We talked about why we love them and why we don't. Chris shared a little about her favorite Bruce Springsteen song and what it means to her.
You know, I decided, okay, if she's going to ask me my favorite song, I'll tell her it's Badlands. And so if you ever get a chance to listen to it or even just to read the lyrics, it is about working class, and it is about really struggling in your life, but believing, the ones who had a notion deep inside that it ain't no sin to be glad you're alive. That just really speaks to my heart and to what I believe. His struggles, with depression, with his family, like his family dynamic with his father. It's just so. It's just the way he speaks about it is so real, and I think it's something that it's so universal. I don't know anyone who hasn't at least experienced some of what he talks about. And I guess that's just why I just love him. And the other thing is the hopefulness. I mean, the promised land. He believes in the promised land, and so do I. But I think one thing he tries to say, and that I try to say, is that we're the ones who are going to create it. That it's up to us. We know what we want, but we have to work to get it, and we have to convince other people that it's worth the struggle. So that's why I love Bruce.
That's really cool. It's like a really good message, especially for the people who are a scriber.
Yeah, but Jenna, what I think, having lived so long, is that all of us are people at Scriber. It's just that some people pretend they're not, and kind of, I don't know. What I love about Scriber is that it's so real, and that the kids are so authentic, and it just, like at EW, I mean, I love DW, and I love, but there was so much that was so artificial, and you really don't see that with at Scriber. And I don't know. I just think it's a wonderful place that, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
I learned a lot talking to Chris, but there was still one burning question I knew I had to ask to satisfy Scriber listeners.
Do you have a favorite cup of noodles flavor?
I do, absolutely. Chicken. Chicken just wins, hands down. That was a very important question. I'm glad we got that settled. But I hope everyone takes note.
It's been on my mind for a few years.
I hope everyone takes note, though, that I don't just stock my favorite. I do stock all three varieties.
Yeah.
Yes. Customer satisfaction is important to me.
We left our interview with a message from Chris to all Scriber students.
Oh, that I miss him so much. But see, and send me some emails, people. I love to get them. You guys all give me hope. You give me great hope.
Oh, Chris, you do the same for us.
Hi, my name is Jenalise Jensen, and I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story, I Don't Love You, from the book Listen. It's about experiencing my biological father for the first time in about 10 years, and my struggle with that. And a little bit before we start, I do have 5 siblings, so it might get a little confusing. Annie, Tisa, Jeremy, and Emma are my older siblings. Naya is my little sister, and Ella Marie is my baby niece. I hope that clears some stuff out for you. My family was sitting in a circle when I came down. I was hoping I could stay upstairs for this, but they came for me anyway. It was somber in the garage, the man cave, where we would watch comedies and football and listen to music. One comfortable couch, one rocker for when Ella came over, and twin Seahawk camp chairs. The designated chill area. The night before, my mom had fallen on her way to bed, and my brother thought it was because of drinking and told my sisters about it. That's why all of my siblings were gathered around the gray carpet, to hold a sort of intervention to tell my mom we were worried about her. My sister Tisa and my mom sat in the camp chairs, Tisa was crying and holding Ella across her lap while Annie and my mom were involved in a heated discussion. "You never tell us what's bothering you. None of you tell me anything," Annie said. Annie was rarely at the house because of 2 jobs and her boyfriend's 3 kids. Emma was sitting on the floor in front of all of them. She was also in tears. Naya and I stood behind the couch where Annie and Jeremy sat. My heart felt like it was being squeezed into a spiked cage and my eyes burned. "I shouldn't have to tell you what is happening with me," my mom said. Her eyes were watering and her face was blotchy, just as I'm sure my own was. "They're my problems and I won't tell you about them if I don't have to," my mom said while crossing her arms, leaning back and looking at the shelf to her right. She spoke as if she was defending herself from an attack. "I am just concerned for you. I am just concerned for you. I just want to make sure you're okay," Annie yelled. She was crying and desperate. "Does this have anything to do with Dad?" "Do not bring up your dad," my mom said firmly. "Do not." "Why not? We need to talk about him. He is a part of this too," Annie said. Her voice wavered slightly, but it was strong and powerful. My mom scoffed and shook her head. "F your dad. He hasn't been a part of this for years. I am not talking about this right now," she said. Naya slowly inched her way into the laundry room so that she wouldn't have to see what was going on. I didn't want to look either, but I needed to. I felt hurt because I had never seen my mom so out of sorts when it came to my dad. I felt guilty for holding an idealized image of him. For the first time, I wondered if that had hurt my mom, the mom I love so fucking much, who never thinks she's good enough. She gives advice, accepts us for who we are, and has never pushed us beyond our limits. She took on multiple jobs to support 6 kids spanning an 11-year age difference. She has always been our rock. She is the person I want to make the proudest, because she might finally realize that she is one hell of a mother. Tisa looked between the 2 of them and said in a watery voice, "Guys, can we please not fight?" "We are not fighting," Annie said. "This isn't a fight," my mom said. I walked into the laundry room and hugged Naya. We had never really shown a lot of affection towards each other, but we both needed it then. My mom sat in her chair, her knee bouncing up and down, her face a stiff, emotionless mask. "You guys know that he threatened to kill us, right?" Her voice shook. She still couldn't look at us. "Said he would take us up to a house in the mountains." She paused and made air quotes in the mark. "To protect us." Silence reigned among the rest of us. Mom's voice was wet and her chin was shaking. "He would have killed me to stop me from being with anyone else." Naya started breaking down again, so while I just looked down at the ground, I rubbed her back. Her words were like poison, eating away at my memories of him like they were a piece of paper in a fire. A dark and all-consuming flame that was beginning to engulf everything surrounding it, including any protection I had against my past and myself. I had known my dad was terrible to my mom, and occasionally even my sisters and brother. I knew he called my mom names bad enough that I can't even say them, and said Tisa was a liar for something after our vacation in Utah, but I had never heard about his plan to kill us. I had been indifferent about him for the last couple of years after starting to realize that he wasn't the best dad, and I avoided talking about him. But in that moment I felt fear and anger. Everything inside of me sank to the bottom of the ocean, where it was dark and heavy and a hungry, desperate void. All of my siblings except Naya nodded their heads and said they knew about it. Everything I was feeling before just amplified tenfold. I wished they had told me about something so important rather than letting me keep this image of a man who might have been my murderer. How much more is there that I don't know, I wondered.
Hello, I am Alana Lochner, and I'm here with Jenna Elise Jensen, and I'm going to be asking a few questions. Do you think you'll ever speak to your dad again?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't have any plans to. Haven't really talked to him since Thanksgiving of 2017. I don't think I would like to, but I do have 5 siblings, and 4 of them have yet to be married. There's not really a whole lot of love lost, which is kind of sad, but you know, we've all got our stuff. And I have a great stepdad.
If it were a perfect scenario, Jenna, could you see yourself seeing your father again?
Perfect scenario would be I would have to be in the same room as him, but I would be too occupied or too busy to have to talk to him very much.
You've always been a close-knit family. How did this process impact that?
I don't think that writing the story really changed our relationship at all. I did learn more about the situation after my family read it.
What made you decide to write the story?
So I wrote it in sophomore year, and for anyone who's ever been a sophomore, that's probably the worst year of high school, I think.
I agree.
That year I was having so much anxiety and I was very, very depressed. I wanted to find an outlet to turn it into something better than it was. So I decided to write, and it worked.
Was it hard to write it?
I think the worst part about it was rethinking all of these events all at the same time, and then having to show it to Margie for the first time. That was, I think, those were the only 2 times I cried.
Was it difficult for you to put yourself back in that place?
I don't really think enough time had passed after what happened for me to really leave that place mentally. So it never really felt like I was going back to it. It more felt like I had to stop ignoring it.
What's the difference between the person you were writing this and the person you are after having written it?
Writing kind of pushed me to confront myself and the walls that I put up. Since writing it and reading it to a bunch of different people, it kind of helped me to limit myself on how, the system in which I keep people away. That has gotten a lot better. I'm much more open about what's going on than I was.
Do you want to continue writing stories?
I actually write a lot of fan fiction. Well, not a lot. I've never actually finished one, but I've been wanting to write more emotion-based stories than I have.
How are you doing now?
I still have a lot of anxiety, so much. I almost had an anxiety attack earlier this morning when my brother made me drive the lawnmower. So, but I was in therapy for over half a year, and I did learn kind of how to process things. I've kind of stopped my mass compartmentalization that I used to do so that I could actually process things. I think now I'm a bit more focused on, okay, that happened, it's okay, we're just gonna move past it.
How did this writing the story help you emotionally?
It hurt a lot, just because I had to face the reality that my family was gonna know that I almost attempted suicide.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was a secret that was hurting even more than telling them would have been. Writing it and having my family read it was kind of a release that I needed in order to let my family know that I wasn't okay. It was kind of a nice, simple, but at the same time very complicated way of telling my family that, hey, I might need a little bit of help.
Did writing this help you to see your future differently, be more hopeful or positive maybe?
Yeah, before I wrote this, I kind of saw my future as this far distant thing that wasn't really ever going to come. I had things that I wanted to do, but I never really imagined myself actually getting to do them or to be able to succeed in things like that. But after writing it, it kind of made me think about the fact that, okay, I just actually became a published author. Like, that happened and
Yeah.
I was only 16, 17.
That's super
So,
cool.
yeah. So it
Such
kind
a
of made
flex.
me, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I did kind of see that I can actually like put myself out there and accomplish things, and I can go at my future with a brighter mentality. I'll still struggle because, that's just the way that I am, but
Aw.
it'll be better than it would have been if I hadn't written this. If you're out there and you're like struggling and you're just kind of holding everything in, it doesn't matter like what your situation is. It could be a bad breakup or it could be self-destruction. If you feel like you're out there alone, just write about it and then have one person read it. It could be a total stranger or it could be the closest person you know. Let one person read it, and after, just kind of realize that you did something and you're strong because of it. Like that was the best experience that came out of this for me.
Our Scriber family suffered an indescribable loss this past week, giving us one more reason to come together as a community. The podcast team would like to acknowledge the life of Alex Cluwell and dedicate this episode to his memory. Everyone has a story, and our commitment to hearing those stories and listening to one another is more important than ever. Scriber Under Quarantine is co-written and produced by Jenna Jensen, Alana Lochner, and me, Soraya Slaughter. Original music composed by Sydney Hillman, editing done by Rachel Ramey, Margie Bowker, and Chelsea Gorzelski. Thank you for listening and stay tuned in for the next episode. Until next time.